Hello everyone and welcome back to another series of interviews. You have seen that we have talked about the champions from Southeast Asia. We interviewed Mr. Bear and Adele, and now we're going to talk about the top players in North America and in Europe. And right here today we're going to have Sergi2Vamos and MajiinBae. How are you doing, guys? First of all, congratulations. How do you feel after winning, specifically going runner-up in the tournament?
I feel pretty good. I would say I feel all right about it.
Yeah, I don't feel as good as him, but I still feel pretty good.
Second's really good. What is it? 1,000 people? That does not suck.
1,024. Yeah, it's not bad.
Pretty commendable. I'd say it's all right.
Yeah.
10k pretty good feeling like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll pay some bills. Maybe I'm probably buy some like lunch with it or something. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, did you guys expect to go this far into the competition? For example, Serhi, did you expect to go this far into the competition?
Well, I feel like the only possible answer to that is no. I mean, mathematically, it's very unlikely that you'll ever get that far, but you of course play to win. I always play to win, but I try to keep expectations really basic. Just try to play my best in the games, and for open rounds, I was 4 wins would be considered good enough for me. Of course, I wanted the 5 to advance, but 4 wins is like you did okay. Had maybe an unlucky series or two, but you still did okay. As I said, expectations, I don't really try to bother myself with it too much. Just try to win the games ahead. I always do, I try to forget about the price cutoffs and stuff like that, because I think it just gets into your head. So to not start counting, the wins or the losses, I just try to reset in my head and just go to the next game without bothering myself with it.
How about you, MajiinBae? Did you think that you're going to get this far, or did you start up with the same mentality as Sergio did?
Pretty close to the same mentality. I wanted to go 5-0 in the open because I wanted to top 32 again. And then I was like, as long as I can make it to top 32 again, I'll be happy. And then I made it to top 32, and I wouldn't even let myself consider the thought of actually winning. I was like, all right, as long as we can make it to top 8, I'll be so happy if we can make it to top 8. And then I beat Raptor for my top 8 match, and I was like, oh, I can win this. Raptor was the person I was most scared of. It was Raptor, Kever, and Ian who I faced in the finals. And I was like, oh no, I can actually I can dare to hope. But until that point, I agree. I try to keep my expectations low, not let it get to me, and just try to play the best game I can.
Very nice. And since this is not your first rodeo, did you feel like anything changed? Pointing only at yourself first, not talking about the meta, because we're going to talk about the decks first. Anything in the philosophy, in the mentality that you approached the game?
From first seasonal to second seasonal, you mean? Yes. Changed a lot. I was kind of good at the game, but I was very new to it at a high level. I hit Masters once before, I think, and I just didn't really play the game. And then they said, hey, seasonals is coming. And I went, okay, now it's time to dive into the game. So I dove in and I made it, and I was confident that I was a very good player, but I wasn't confident that I was a very good player, you know what I mean? I could beat most people on ladder, but I didn't know if I could go up against the tournament crushers. And I felt very underprepared. And then this seasonal, I felt very prepared. I was testing with a very strong group. I put it in the time, and I just felt more confident in this seasonal.
And did you feel like anything changed player-wise, the player base since last seasonal to this one?
I think the player base as a whole has gotten better, but maybe that's just me projecting. I think both seasonal top 32s were just filled with very high level players both times.
All right. And now, let's not talk about the past, let's not talk about the experience per se, and let's talk about the decks, because people want to know about the decks, and we're going to start with you, Sergio. And the first deck is something that I am bored to mention already because we are seeing it already everywhere, but it is Fizz TF. Why? Just why?
Well, it's pretty good. I mean, you just have to watch the finals and you know how good it is.
Good.
I mean, it's in my opinion, you know, it's the best deck in the game by a decent margin, and it's a pretty hard deck to counter. So for me, it was a pretty straightforward bring. It also just has good synergy with the aggro decks that I'm playing. It can close out decks like Foundry that are already bad into aggro, Soraka. It's also pretty decent against Lee, which sees a lot of play, although I don't really want to face it. Ethereal Draven, it has way too many good matchups, and I feel like if you have put the time with the deck, you can fight in a lot of unfavored matchups to make them okay enough. So yeah, for me it was a no-brainer. It was the first deck I had pretty much clear I was gonna bring, and I don't think we have to talk about the cards in the deck, right? They are all pretty standard, except maybe the MK1 cannon. I think that's the only
What was
difference.
the purpose of that?
Well, I'm playing aggro decks, but I'm playing the aggro decks that are the best into aggro. So I want to have good matchups. You know, into pirates, of course. Fizz TF is not very good into pirates, but I'm trying to maximize my chances into discard and pirates with this deck by including the MK cannon, and it's also a good tech for the mirror, which I'm never running. So I need to be as good as possible into the mirror. Yeah. The same reasoning why I'm not playing 3 suit-ups in the deck is more for the control matchups. Yeah, and I'm playing more boring.
I would like to ask you if this deck has ever let you down during the grind to the final. Did it ever let you down?
I mean, luckily I didn't have that many losses, so I remember the losses I had. So this deck lost 0 times. This card lost 3 times, and Spiders lost 1. So I went 19-4 total. And yeah, this one didn't lose that any time, but also to be fair, it was banned a lot. So I didn't really play so many games with it compared to the others, but yeah. I don't think I actually lost a single game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I think we can expect this out of Fizz TF. Like, it's the deck that has the most the nuttiest hands that you can get. You basically play with your whole deck because you have that cycle power. Nothing to be said about this. It's just a strong deck for now. But I would like to ask you, MajiinBae, why did you bring Fizz TF yourself? We're going to go over your deck as well, but why did you bring Fizz TF yourself? Because I think you have it in your lineup as well.
I brought Fizz TF because my plan going to top 32 was to play the decks that could steal as many wins as possible. And I think Fizz TF can just steal wins, even in bad matchups. Like you pointed out earlier, it can just win based off the sheer power level of the deck, and it's a forcer ban, or you have to try to beat it. And so, my plan going into it was, okay, people are going to ban my Fizz TF, and then I get to play these other 2 decks that I'm very, very confident with. And yeah, I really like the pick.
All right.
Yeah.
Now let's go to your second deck, probably, Sergio, because your second deck is something more interesting, something more spicy, something that is called Discard Aggro.
I find it flattering that you call this spicy, but yeah, it's a very standard discard aggro list. I wanted to talk about briefly about my strategy going into it, I guess, since we are now reviewing the decks. So I expected most people, or like the meta standard thing to bring, could be to go for Aphellos deck, Fizz deck, and Lee or Karma. Just something Ionia Targon because it's very strong. So my idea was to leave open as much as possible of Aphellos, Tamkench especially, and Fizz TF as possible, because my aggro decks are just gonna try to farm those, and they have good matchups into it. Since Aphellos is not using a TF, so you can just go very wide on the board and win. And yeah, this card aggro deck fits into the plan perfectly. It has a pretty decent matchup into Aphellos just because Jinx can get out of control pretty easily against that deck. They only have challengers to kill it, and you can play around it. And also, if you don't open Aphellos, you're just dead. Like if you don't open the Lunari into Aphellos, you're just very behind and just mostly lose. So I was very confident with the deck, and it's also like the strongest aggro deck into all the aggro matchups because it goes much more explosive than other decks like Pirates that play one unit at a time. So you can just overwhelm them and be always on the aggressive in those matchups. So yeah, that was basically the explanation why I brought it. I think it has good matchups overall, and specifically into the decks I was expecting the most. And yeah, also I guess I didn't talk about it, but yeah, into Foundry and Soraka, especially Foundry, this card is a very solid choice that is also gonna not allow them to get the win. So yeah, that's it. And for the list, it's just a list. I don't really have anything special in it. I guess the Saboteur, but yeah, it could be a Draven biggest fan. It doesn't really matter. It's a one drop.
I think one question I would like to address you regarding this card aggro. How lucky do you feel you need to be in order to play this list to hit those highs? Because this card usually hits high highs but also low lows. So how lucky do you need to be? Like normal lucky or lottery winning lucky?
Well, I think this card aggro is on the average or lower than average decks in terms of variance. I think that a lot of other decks are much more draw dependent than this card aggro. But it is obviously correct that you have some monster hands that require you to be very lucky to hit multiple vision and discard targets into ramage hands and stuff like that. But for you to have a playable hand that is going to allow you to win the game is not actually very hard. So yeah, it depends on the matchup. There are some matchups that you need to high roll a bit, but I wouldn't say this is a high roll deck. I think some other considered solid decks like Shenfiora have or Foundry can have like very much worse variance than this.
Yeah. I mean, when I see this card aggro on ladder pretty much everywhere, I just see the sick openings, Zonai turning into Jury again, I'm like, oh god, not again. Not the sick opening, not 2-drop into 3-drop into vision into I die. I want to leave, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, life is rough.
It wasn't that rough for you, so congratulations for piloting this card aggro to such a high level and into the final. But let's
this deck actually did very bad. Did very bad compared to the others. Yeah, I always laugh with the people that I was testing with because in the test Spiders was going quite rough, but then in the tournament it did great, and this card did really good in the scrims. But then in the tournament it was the one that struggled the most. But yeah, let's go ahead. I'm not gonna drag this longer.
Let's see because you spoke about it, what was the reasoning behind bringing Spider aggro, honestly?
Well, so yeah, basically the same idea as this card aggro. Is very good into Aphellos and Fizz, and I expected this to be the most popular decks in the ladder. I mean, they are pretty strong decks. You can ask Magic about it. And I just wanted to be very, very prepared for them, and I think I have favored matchups into both of them, and I have decent matchups into also Foundry and Soraka as all my other decks. So I can beat the people that are playing the most popular decks, and I also can beat the people that are trying to counter Lee and those decks with greedier strategies. So yeah, this is the reason. And this is just a very straightforward list that just goes wide and hits you in the face. Nothing very special about it. I only have one deck that I want to highlight because I think no one plays it in Spiders. Is the Mark. This was actually suggested to me by my friend Raxitos, and you might know him from the EU Masters, one of the best Spanish players around. So this was also for the Fizz TF matchup. You can see in one of my games in the semifinals, I actually used it very well to dodge removal and hit the face for 6. I mean, it didn't actually end up hitting the face, but it, forced my opponent into making a horrible play to avoid it. So yeah, this is just a card that is to play around removal, like Mystic Shot and Get Excited, which Fizz just needs to use to stay alive, and then you hit them for more damage, so they just die. This is basically the idea behind it. And I think it was a very cool tech card. I mean, not tech card. It was a cool choice that he put me on, and I could use in a couple of games to steal wins. So, yeah, the rest is just very standard. Burn and chip units.
And now that we revealed all your lineup, and I'll go back after that to a question towards you, MajiinBae. Now that you revealed all your lineup, Sergio, what did you actually encounter? Did you encounter what you expected, or did you see some variance, or actually the opposite what you tried to counter?
I mean, you mean in the top 32? In the open rounds, it's a little bit more random. In the top 32, I faced mostly what I was expecting. I did then face as much Stamkench as I expected with Aphellos. I faced other champions, but they don't really change my plan that much, you know. It's one of the advantages of bringing Aggro is the matchups don't really have that much of a nuance. You're just trying to do the same thing, you know, playing around a couple different cards. So yeah. In general, I faced the stuff that I expected. I was surprised to see as much Draven Ethereal though. I wasn't expecting to see a lot of it. But other than that, it was the decks that I expected. Yeah.
And right back to you, MajiinBae. If you would have seen a triple aggro lineup like this, what would be the first thing that you would tell yourself?
I'd probably panic for a second. I did play against one triple aggro lineup. But yeah, like he said, this lineup is built to prey on my lineup. It just goes under what I do. And so, yeah, I'd be a little scared probably.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't want to intrude on his answer, but yeah, I think what you need to do in those situations is you need to remember your decks are broken, so you can.
Yeah, my decks are very powerful. I just have to not get ran over on turn 4, which is what happened in my triple aggro matchup. Is I stabilized and did Lee Sin things, and one turn killed my opponent for like 19 damage or something.
Yeah. I mean,
you just have to not die.
I definitely would ban Lee Sin out of your decks. I think that's the strongest. I have to say though that, you know, as a summary of my lineup performing, I didn't ban Fizz TF a single time, and the only time I lost to it was in the finals, unfortunately. But yeah, other than that, I think my losses were like once to Draven Ethereal, twice to Aphellos, and once to Fizz. So yeah, all the rest I handled pretty well.
Yeah, we were talking about what you would ban out of MajiinBae, what he would do if you would have faced your lineup. So let's see what you actually brought to the NA seasonal and what won the NA seasonal. And the first deck was, you mentioned you did some unholy things with it. It was Zoe Lee.
Yep. Yeah, a little different than your stock Zoe Lee list. I expected a lot of Aphellos, Fior Shen, and Zoe Lee in top 32. And my plan was just to ban Fizz TF every single game it showed up. So I wanted to play a Zoe Lee deck that was built to beat Zoe Lee decks, Fior Shen decks, and Aphellos decks. So I just went bigger. You'll see with the Temples, the Fangs, Homecomings, it just allowed me to hang in the game, play more of a longer game against these value-oriented decks. And I really like the changes.
You're mentioning something about playing a longer game. Was there the consideration to play Zoe Karma instead at any point?
There was, yes, but I lose with that deck a lot, so I decided not to play it.
If you lose with it, it's probably not meant to be.
Probably not. I think it's harder to play, and it has a much more polarizing matchup spread, which isn't really what I wanted. I wanted more game against aggro, and I think Zoe Karma can kind of get ran over. Whereas, like, with Zoe Lee, I feel pretty safe if I can go, like, Goat into Eye, or Sparklefly plus Mentor can just win you the game outright.
Yeah, definitely. And Sergio, you mentioned that your lineup was supposed to prey on this, but this list, the Zoe Lee Sin list, is quite tweaked, quite different. Would your statement be the same? Would you prey, as you said, on this list in particular with your lineup?
I think my plan from the start was to ban Lee Sin in general, especially Lee Sin Aphellos, but mostly since that aren't very greedy are quite decent into aggro just because I have the dragon. I mean, there's different types of aggro decks, and my aggro decks play a lot of small dudes that just die. Dragon Links are annoyed by them, so you don't really want to hang with those. So I just ban it. Yeah, my ban priority in the tournament was Freely or Desai first, and then leasing and discard second priority. So yeah, leasing is gonna be a ban most matches, I think, for me.
Yeah, all right.
Because
Understood.
the leasing player will just ban my Fizz TF, which is the good matchup I have, and I will have to face even two unfavored matchups with the rest. So yeah,
Right.
I would
Now
ban it.
let's move forward to the second deck that you have brought, MajiinBae, and the second deck. All right, I don't need to mention it. It's just Fizz
Yeah.
TF.
Woo.
Standard Fizz TF.
Yeah. It's just got 2 mind melds, which I think is the weird. Oh, and 1 aftershock, which are the weird things.
Why Aftershock?
Aftershock. So I cut Mystic Shot for Aftershock because Mystic Shot's only in the deck to kill TF in the mirrors, and I'm banning Fizz TF, so I don't need it. Like, and if I want to beat, again, my plan is to beat like the Zoe Lee, the Fiora Shen, and the Aphellos decks. And so I wanted to be able to shoot Fiora on 3, shoot Aphellos on 3, blow up Temple. And yeah, I think it just gives me more options in those matchups. And then the second mind meld is for the same reason. Like if I'm playing Fiora Shen or whatever, or Aphellos, right? I'm playing Aphellos. Every like Poro needs to be dealt with because my opponent's running 2 copies of mind meld. And so I think it gives it a little extra weight in those matchups. I give up some percentage points probably against like aggro, but I was hoping for my other decks to carry me, or for me to just do unfair things with Burblefish and win anyway.
I mean, when in doubt, just press the Burblefish button and then improvement. Your opponent dies, surrenders, they cry, they forget about everything that they knew. You mentioned that you would have wanted to have like a second win against Fiora Shen, but did you think like Zonite Urchin, for example, would be a liability into the Fiora Shen matchup?
Yes, I did. It blocks Green Glade and River Shaper, and that's really nice, but it's like obviously killable by Fiora. I didn't like it in that matchup, but I think it's too good in the more go wide strategies, like the aggro decks, Pirates, discard, things like that. It's too good to not have. And if it looks awful, I can just rummage it away. That's the power of this deck, is I have so many ways to discard or shuffle things in that even like cards that might not be super good, I can just exchange for other cards.
When in doubt, discard it out. Did you actually find the Fiora Shen against this Fizz TF during your run in the top 42?
I played against Fiora Shen, and yes, I did. It was in the semifinals, and it ended when my opponent concerted struck my Fizz. And then I cast a spell. they were a little behind, so I understand why they did it. But yeah, it went about as well as you'd expect.
5 mana, you also cry. Yeah. Nothing special about this, but I think we're going to go to the spice of things because your lineup was pretty interesting with the last deck. You named this deck Tommy Gun, but I decided to go for Yummy
Aphellos. Both great names.
Why Tom Kench?
Well, one, because Fizz TF is broken, and so I wanted to also play that.
Seems fair.
But Aphellos into Boxtopus on 3 is also broken, so I wanted to play that. Plus, again, I came here to beat Fiora Shen, Zoe Lee, and Aphellos decks. And Tom Kench is such a nightmare for all 3 of those decks. You play Tom Kench, and then you play Temple, and you just buff him every single turn, and they can never get rid of him. Especially with the 2 copies of Bastion. So yeah, it's like an Aphellos deck built to beat Aphellos decks. And you'll see that with I have the Mind Meld, I have the 3 star shapings. I'm just trying to go a little bit bigger than all the other Aphellos decks. It worked out really well for me.
Looking at it and looking at Tom Kench, I think it is your surefire removal because you have Temple, and it's mostly your removal because if you rely on Solari Priestess or some Invoke later on, you're just going to die. But if you have Tom Kench, it's just there, it's just staring them into the eye, and you simply tell them, come on, Play a unit. I know you want
do
to
it.
play a unit.
Do it. Yeah. Play your Lee Sin. Come on. I won't do anything, I promise. Yeah, and that's what's so good. It removes champions, which can be very hard for this deck. It gets rid of Fiora, it gets rid of Shen, it gets rid of Lee, it gets rid of their Aphellos, Twisted Fates, and that's why he's there.
Very nice. And Sergio, then again, you said that your lineup should be favored. Would you feel that favored into a Tahm Kench Aphellos, not a casual one?
Yeah, fantastic. Is the ideal choice for me as the slower champion, and in general, I don't care about any other champion that is not TF on this deck, but the ones that are not TF, I think they care the most about Diana, which can be annoying for some of my decks. And Tahm Kench is just quite slow. It only really does a lot if you're losing the game already, which is that you're already very behind and can't do anything. But yeah, in most cases, I think you will just win. I think, of course, these decks, you can't just say you will win against them because the Aphellos opener can steal the game sometimes when they have a lot of good support for it. But yeah, I feel confident. I think I would feel favored into his matchup, into his decks, but I can't, deny the truth that he is just playing the more powerful lists in general. My lineup is just a little bit more anti-meta in this case. He's just playing the 3 strongest decks, I guess you could call it. Maybe not the 3 strongest, but the 3 strongest that synergize with each other and are legal to play. Basically.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So yeah, I mean, my own decision to bring Aggro is because if I was on the mind of a player that likes to play these decks and, he knows that they are going to be popular and he wants to go a little bit greedier than the opposition to have the edge on the mirrors because, it's just horrible having to face a mirror when it's not really a mirror. You're just playing Diana and the opponent is playing Tahm Kench and he drops it on 4 and you lose. So you don't want to go into a tournament knowing that you're just going to be unfavored on the mirrors and have like a really rough time winning unfavored matchups back to back, right, against every opponent. So I expected people to go greedier. So if they go greedier, I'm going to go more aggressive and try to prey on that. So yeah, I think, I don't have to say it because the results already showed that his lineup is fantastic, very good into most things. And yeah, my lineup could happen to beat it most games, but it would be a close match in any case.
Speaking about close matching, going back to you, MajiinBae, did you find any triple aggro lineup or any more aggressive lineup in your run towards the final?
Yeah, I played a triple aggro lineup that was Fizz TF, discard aggro, and Pirates, and then I played against Raptor in the quarterfinals that had Fizz TF and his Vi Riven deck. And they were scary, for sure. Definitely scary. I felt more confident against the aggro decks with the Tahm Kench Aphellos and the Zoe Lee than I did with Fizz TF. I don't have a ton of experience on Fizz TF, not as much as I do in the other decks. I tend to avoid the best deck when I'm like playing ladder because I think it's boring. So yeah, I just tried to play my Eye of the Dragons on 2 and do broken Aphellos things and hope it worked out.
All right, and after we revealed both lineups, I'm curious how much would the comfort factor count for you boys? For example, for you, MajiinBae, how much would the comfort factor count?
Oh, it counted for a lot. When I wasn't playing Fizz TF, that was. I'm extremely comfortable with the Aphellos Boxtopus decks, and I played Zoe Lee more than any other deck, I think, this season. Different variations of it, but I'm very, very comfortable with that style of play.
How about you, Sergio?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a super big aggro player, despite me playing a lot of that lately. But I think the aggro decks, it's a playstyle that I'm familiar with from a long time, and I think they are pretty linear, and they mostly rely on your own proficiency with the deck and very simple, basic notions about playing around cards, which are not very complicated. So in general, I think one of the beauties of playing aggro is the fact that you can feel comfortable with it in a small amount of games and can feel pretty okay into most matchups. As I said before, I think it's important in a tournament when you face a big range of players that are going to put all types of things into their decks. You know, with Aggro, it doesn't really matter that they are choosing to play Astral Protection and one copy of Bastion in their deck. Is not going to change your matchup. You're just doing the same thing. So it helps you feel familiar, even if the decks are unfamiliar to you. Other things that with Control you might not be accustomed to, like playing around different cards, having different deck cards in mind. Aggro just makes everything linear and easier. So I definitely feel like when I play these decks, I'm mostly in control of what I'm doing. If I lose, it's never you can make misplays, of course, but is usually due to the draws or how the games went, more than just I didn't know what to do in this situation because I never faced X or Y. So yeah, I definitely think it's a big comfort is really big, and you need to feel confident in the decks you bring because you're just gonna second guess yourself if you don't. So you're gonna end up playing really crap if you play a really controlling deck with a lot of decisions and you don't feel confident doing X or Y.
Yeah. So the follow-up to that question would be for you and then for MajiinBae. Will you bring decks that are performing or that you think are going to counter the meta, or decks that you rather feel comfortable with?
I mean, of course, you wanna, if you take this game a little bit seriously or like seriously enough to try to compete and win the events, you need to have at least a pool of decks. You don't have to play every deck, but you need to have a pool of decks that you can pilot, or in a matter of days you can be on a level where you can be confident piloting that is high enough that you are a little bit flexible as a player and not just a one-trick pony that I'm gonna bring X, Y, and Z, and if this is not meta, well, apparently I suck now. You wanna go a little bit further than that and have like a decent list of decks that you can play, and it has to be a balance of being strong in the meta and you being comfortable with them. I normally try to move myself toward the mountain instead of trying to make the mountain come towards me. So I try to make myself comfortable in the best decks, so I don't have to have those doubts often.
How about you, MajiinBae? What do you think? Performance or comfort?
I tend to lean towards more comfort, but I totally agree. I try to play every single deck I see that I'm not used to, at least once or twice, just to get a feel for how the deck runs. I think it makes you more comfortable if your opponent brings it. You kind of understand it on a deeper level. And then, like you said, what if I'm a Scouts one trick and ladder, but Scouts is bad, or it gets banned? I'm just screwed. Like I'm just never winning ever again. I think it's important to have a pool of decks. It reminds me a lot of League of Legends players, how there's like the meta, but there's also the picks that each individual pro player is comfortable with. Usually 6 or 7 champions in their pool for their position, and so I try to have it like that. I have maybe 4 decks that I'm extraordinarily comfortable on. I could pick up at any time, and then I try to have another 5 or 6 that with a day or two I could bring up to tournament level.
All right, and what do you think brought you so far into the tournament this time? Through the Swiss rounds, going 5-0 and going 5-0 in the top cut as well. What do you think was the secret?
The secret? I had really good testing partners. That was very, very helpful because you can only get such a good experience on ladder. But when you say, okay, I need to practice this matchup in exactly like this kind of scenario, that it really helps you take it to like the next level, I think, in my opinion.
How about you, Sergio? What brought you to such an awesome performance? What is your secret?
Well, my secret is drawing my curve every game and not making mistakes as much as possible. I mean, of course, I have to be like really, thankful to have so much people that I can play with, and even theory craft, change decks or like refine my decks and stuff like that. Try different matchups. I think that the Spanish community in particular really showed a lot of improvement. I think we went from 2 representatives on top 32 to 8 in the second seasonal, so that was a big improvement, and I think our level is getting higher, and that's part of the truth of what I'm doing better, maybe. But the reality is, like in a car game, you of course need to draw well in the games and pilot well, and I think that's the secret, which is very boring, but yeah, also equally true.
As Nola Gold would say, drawing good, definitely a coachable skill.
Yeah. You can't win a tournament without some luck.
You are talking about partners, guys, so I think this would be a good time to tell people who helped you along the way, who helped you practice, who sustained you. For example, Sergio, who did you have behind?
Well, I have my Team Aretuza, that helps me a lot. You know, we have a lot of powerful players both in NA and EU, and they are a big help in terms of like making me understand different metas or different decks. I think having a team of players that you can trust is really important, because as we said, you can't be 100% confident in every deck. So in my team, for example, if I need like advice on Foundry, I know I can talk to MTAC. He's a pretty good known player at this point, but yeah,
He is the player for Foundry, I think.
so yeah, I know that I can talk to him, and he will give me the pointers, and he will give me the knowledge to the best of his knowledge. He will give me the information that I need. So having that, with different decks and stuff, can help you massively towards preparing to tournaments without putting insane amount of work into everything, which is not only burning you out, but also like making you feel maybe more stressed than you would for a tournament that is kind of a lottery in the latest sense, you know. And yeah, I also want to thank the Spanish community, because they screamed a lot with me, and they helped me. I mean, I already shouted out Raxitos before, but yeah, I mean, there's, I think, dozens of players, maybe I would say. We are more than a dozen that are pretty high level and ready to win tournaments. So yeah, I wanted to shout them out too.
How about you, MajiinBae? Who did you have behind? Who supported you along the way?
I tested a lot with fellow competitor Kever. We worked a lot specifically on the Zoe Lee list that we ended up bringing, and then I have a pretty small testing group that I test with most of the time, like Push P, Z Turtle, Kever, Jason Stational, Wet Am I, Jason Florent, and I test a lot. But I also have tested with other people, so if I didn't name you, don't feel left out. Like you all helped a ton.
You're gonna appear in the credits.
Yeah, it's just gonna a bunch of names. But again, it was so helpful to have people that I could like trust. If someone has a take on a deck, they say, "Hey, I think Mind Meld's bad in Fizz TF." Some random person on Reddit, I can't like take that, and I can consider it and then make my own judgments based on like my play. But if Kever comes up to me and he says, "Hey, this card in Zoe Lee I think is not worth running, maybe we should try this instead," then I know he knows his stuff, and I can take that information immediately, like at face value. And that saves me a ton of time and helps me focus on what I felt I needed to focus on.
Alright, we've been talking about who supported you, and I would like for you to play a little bit that role, boys. So if it would have to be one advice that you would give to the people in order to try and make it to the top as well, what would that be? What would be your advice, for example, Sergio?
Well, if it was just a random player I didn't know, I would just probably tell them to have a clear idea of what the meta is, maybe 5 days in advance to the event. Make a concise, lists of decks that he could play, and try to, bring it down to 4 or 5 quickly, and then to 3 eventually. If you can do it, possibly like 2 days before or so, it would be fantastic, and then trying as much of those decks as possible. I think the main number one mistake that I see people make all the time when they prepare for tournaments is trying to consider everything, second guessing themselves infinitely, and then the last day, at the last possible moment, they decide on a lineup, and they just find themselves the day after with the lineup that they thought maybe at 4 a.m. in the morning, and then it just doesn't work out, or they don't feel confident because they are still thinking about what could have been done. So even if you make the wrong choice, make the choice in time and then try the decks be as prepared as possible, mechanically. And then when you have that done, go to the tournament with no doubts on your mind, play your best, and hope for the best. Yeah.
Very nice. How about you, MajiinBae? What would be that one advice you would give to the people?
If I had to, like, short answer, it would probably be mulligan more and pass more. Longer advice would probably be it really helped me to find streamers who are very good at the game, and then go into their stream and ask them questions like, why'd you do this? Why did you mulligan this card in this matchup? And try to think like, be in their shoes before they make their play. Be like, what would I do here? And if what they do isn't what you would do, ask them why. And I feel like you can get a lot of very valuable insight that way.
Very nice. And it is going to be one more question now that the patch is out, that we are going to know the next seasonal is going to be different. Would that impact you in a meaningful way, guys? And if it would, how? Sergio?
Do you mean the seasonal changing format or just
yes,
the new card?
The new format.
Well, I think perhaps a little bit more effort would have to be made in terms of like staying strong, playing long hours. I think the 9-game format with 60 minutes is not going to be very exhausting if you play aggro, but if you play control decks that can go to 50, 60 minutes per round and you have very little resting time, you can get, it can drain you. Like, playing card games without stopping is actually very draining if you don't do the proper rest. So I would say conditioning yourself a bit better, and also considering a little bit what decks you play in terms of like the length of the game. Although this is not the main factor I would use choosing a lineup, but I will also, try to put myself in the moment and try to say, okay, I can finish have like some little rest would be better. So yeah, try to prepare about going 9 games straight. It's like almost, I think 10 hours is gonna be like 9 hours, whatever. So yeah, I think conditioning would be the best thing you would need to improve compared to now. And then the rest is just basic, fundamentals about playing.
Bouncing to you back, MajiinBae, what would be the meaningful changes for you? What would impact you in the new format?
It's less stressful, at least for me. Going into an event knowing it's single elimination is so anxiety-inducing. It's like, all right, one mistake, one like bad draw, and I'm just out of the tournament. So being able to like lose one and not worry about it helps keep me very calm throughout the whole event, even if I've already lost one. It just makes me feel, I don't know, more at ease. And then I think, like we were talking about before, being comfortable with your strategy will reduce that strain that 9 matches can take on you over the course of a day. So I think it becomes even more important to really feel intimately familiar with the strategies that you're bringing to the tournament.
Do you think it would be detrimental for other players to have that mindset, okay, I lost one, but it's still fine? Maybe would that lead to more comfort, but also to more misplays? Or
possibly. But I take every tournament match very seriously, whether or not I feel relaxed. It just helps me if I feel more comfortable, I'm less likely to make a glaringly obvious misplay, like an onboard trick or something. Maybe for other people it's not that way, but for me it definitely makes me play better.
I would say you can get comfortable when you are 8-0. I think that's my philosophy.
There you go.
I will get comfortable in the game, that doesn't matter, but before I think I'm trying hard.
I'm gonna win it first, yeah.
I mean, serious question now, if you would be 8-0, would you just abandon your last round?
Probably not, because actually that's interesting, because I bet they do top 32 based on seeding still, and then you would get matched up against one of the 7-2s who would actually be one of the highest players ranked on ladder. So maybe it might be beneficial to punt away your last game. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can bring the topic. Maybe it's a bit political, but yeah, I think the seating as is done right now is not ideal, because I don't want to go into details because we would be here talking 30 minutes about it, but as it is right now, it kind of incentivizes you to throw games, especially if you are high ranked on the ladder. you would be better off going 7-2 than 9-0 or like 8-1. Just
Yeah, I think
because,
8-1 is probably preferable. Yeah.
yeah, as he said, you are very likely to find like a very high ranked, lower score player that is going to be a really tough match for you, compared to yourself like being a little bit lower. You would face someone with a better score but lower previous seeding, which would be preferable. So yeah, I think it would be ideal if like the seeding for top 32 was just random, which is, it can be more unfair if you get unlucky, but at the same time it reduces the whole gimmick about throwing games, which is not what card games are about, or just sports in general. It shouldn't be about who I can try to trick my way into getting better seeding by losing this game, or if he loses then I need to be higher. It's like not something that we should be worrying about. We should be trying to worry about playing the best every game, and just the matches that come, just trying to win them, if instead of tricking yourself into better matches, I think. So yeah, I would like to see that change, but in any case, I think the change is positive. Being able to lose one or even two games is not only a little bit more comforting for the players, that they don't feel like they are on edge every time they might lose a game and get out, but it also makes you be able to play your best and choose like maybe a little bit more risky strategy that you think can pay off in the long run, compared to just having to try to go safe and because you can lose a game and just be out of the tournament. So I think it's a positive change, but I think I would like to see that rule maybe thought about a little bit more.
I think every doubt will settle coming with the next seasonal, and we'll see if this change is detrimental, if this is beneficial. We need to see how the tournament is going to work, if there's going to be someone that tries that. But for now, we had a very productive interview, and I'm glad that I could interview you both guys, top players, very good players that have the correct mindset in my opinion, have gotten some tips for the future players and probably for the future champions. Probably if you are watching, probably you can be the future champion, or you might find the guys in the next seasonal, who knows. But thank you guys for being here, congratulations again, and guys, we're going to see you on the next interview. Bye.